Hello, I haven't been here in quite a while, so I thought I would do a video of 10 of my recent favorite reads. These are going to be in no particular order. I'm gonna start with the books that I actually own physically. Starting with The Dagger and the Flame by Catherine Doyle. I was sent this book by Simon & Schuster and absolutely loved this. This is a sort of Romeo and Juliet retelling where they're from rivaling gangs, I guess. There's magic, there's murder, lots of mystery. It's just very interesting, and I love the dynamic between both the romantic couple and their relationships with their friends and things like that. The atmosphere is also just like so good. I do have the physical book, which I read partially, but I switched to audiobook, and I would definitely highly recommend listening to the audiobook if you do pick this up, because Ransom, the guy's point of view, is narrated by Freddie Carter, who is Kaz Brekker from the Shadow and Bone show, so that made it even better. Then we have Air by Sabatier. This I read as an ARC ebook, went and picked it up as soon as I could physically because I loved it that much. This is a kind of spin-off from An Ember in the Ashes series, which I didn't realize when I went into this. I just saw Sabatier and was like, yeah, I'm reading that. I don't want to know anything. Went in blind, and then characters were mentioned, and I was like, yes. Because if you aren't aware, An Ember in the Ashes is one of my all-time favorite series, and I missed it, and I'm glad that we got some of the old characters in this. It made me very happy. This one has multiple POVs in it. There's, I think, a twist. I didn't see it coming, and it blew me away, so I had a great time with that, but I'm also terrible at guessing things when it comes to like twists and stuff, so that could have just been me being oblivious, but still had a great time. I'm very, very excited to see where this story goes in the next books. Then we have Heaven Official's Blessing. This is one that I saw talked about mostly on Bookstagram, like constantly, and I just felt left out. So I picked up this one, and I also own the second volume, and originally I had tried reading this physically and I couldn't get into it. I don't know if it's like just because of how incredibly bright the pages are. I don't know if you can really tell, they're just so white. And I don't know, sometimes that can influence whether I like can read it for a long time, but I ended up picking it up as an ebook and then went crazy with it and loved it. So yes, there are like 8, I think, volumes out, so I really need to pick up the second one and continue with this series because I'm very intrigued, and I feel like only reading the first one is a crime. So also, can I just say, let's see if I can find the art in this. Like there wasn't like a ton, but every time there was art I was like, yeah, I love that. I love when there's like a mixture of things in books like that. So those are all the ones that I own physically. We'll move on to the ones that I don't own now. Starting with Darker by 4, this was another one that I just saw on Bookstagram like crazy and decided that I needed to pick up because I felt left out again and was not disappointed. This was incredible. I listened to the audiobook for this one as well and just had like the best time. I feel like I read it at like the perfect time when it comes to like my mood. So yeah, another book full of magic and really interesting dynamics between the characters, and I didn't know that this wasn't a standalone. I kind of went into it thinking it was, so now I have to wait for the sequel. I don't want to wait, I want it now. another arc that I read was The Legend of the White Snake. This one I read specifically because I loved the author's first book, Fake Dates and Mooncakes. I loved that book so much and like went into it kind of being like, I already know this author can write romance that I really like, so I wasn't disappointed. I had a great time. I liked just like how fun it was. There was a lot going on, and yeah, I was just like very invested from the very beginning and really wanted to know what these characters were going to do and how characters were going to find out certain things. And yeah, great book. And the cover is stunning. Then we have A Vile Season. This was another arc. I've read a lot of arcs recently. This one, again, was by an author that I had read before, and this one is about a vampire. Of course, this was like perfect for reading in October, and it was such an interesting concept of a vampire is basically like he has his vampire abilities and everything taken away. He gets turned into a human and has to basically participate in like The Bachelor but like in like Pride and Prejudice vibe time. Honestly, I just thought this was super fun and I really liked the characters, and the romance was really like push and pull kind of vibe, which was very fun to read. And honestly, I'll eat up anything that is queer vampires. Then we have The Wilderness of Girls. This was really interesting and like nothing that I've ever read before. I listened to the audiobook for this, and it's basically following this group of girls who act very much like wolves and are like in a pack and have lived in the wilderness basically their whole lives, and are discovered by another girl who helps them basically readjust to society and trying to figure out their storyline, basically how they got in the wilderness, if there's any truth to what they were told growing up. And yeah, it was super interesting. I had a really good time reading this and trying to figure out like what was going on, if what these girls were saying was true or if they were brainwashed. And yeah, very interesting. Then we have a manga series called Blue Flag. I will say I kind of wish it ended like halfway through the last volume. The ending was quite disappointing in my opinion, just because it felt very rushed. Like we spent like 7 volumes leading up to this one thing, and then we don't really get to see that. And we're just kind of like thrown into a 10 years later kind of vibe, which I didn't love. I liked seeing certain things, but I kind of wish that was stretched out through like an entire separate volume, and that we got to see a little bit more of like the 10 years or whatever, how many years that we skipped. But I still had a really good time with this, and I love all the queer representation and the topics that are talked about. My favorite character really just like goes off on a million different tangents about how she wishes men and women could be friends in the same way that women and women are friends, and the same way that men and men are friends, and that you could show the same sort of affection with your male friends that you do with your female friends. Like, it's just all the rants. I was just like, yes, go off. So agree. But yeah, it was just a really fun manga, and I'm getting into manga more this year, and that was one of the series that I actually fully completed. So, and then finally I read a nonfiction book called Men Who Hate Women, which was deeply depressing. It just felt so real and so accurate and like relevant to the times, which made it harder to read. And yeah, the author basically went into a bunch of forums of like incels and pickup artists and stuff like that, and basically just tells us her findings and what these men are saying in these chat rooms and forums, and what is so often very downplayed, like, oh, incels are kind of like laughed off, right? Like no one takes them super seriously, but they do cause a lot of harm, and it is gaining popularity, the like mindsets and ideals in that community. Very relevant and scary. So yeah, those are 10 books that I've really enjoyed reading in the last few months, and hopefully I can continue to read really good books, and the end of the year brings only good books, no duds, all good books for the rest of the year. I would really like to try and come back to YouTube on a more permanent basis, but I am forever just chaotic on here. I pop in sometimes, basically only when I have time where family isn't home and they can't hear me film. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and let me know some books that you've enjoyed watching recently, and I will see you in the next one.